Incredible reveal, 7 powerful words changed everything for the beaten woman in the rain. Raindrops streaked the diner window like the haunting memories Sarah couldn't shake. At 32, she felt the weight of her past pressing down on her, threatening to engulf her entire being. Every day, she put on a brave face as she shuffled between tables, pouring coffee for strangers who regarded her plight with judgment rather than compassion. Around town, whispers followed her like a dismal shadow, the relentless reminder of heartbreak and abuse altering her trajectory in ways she never thought possible. Tonight, the storm outside mirrored her inner turmoil, thick and unyielding. Back home, Lily awaited her, unaware of the burdens lurking behind her mother's weary smile. The gnawing fear that she couldn't provide the bright future her daughter deserved gnawed at Sarah. Each drop of rain felt like another question knocking at her door: how long could she keep running from the torment of her past? As she left the diner, soaked from head to toe, she trudged through the darkness, her heart heavy. The streets glistened under the streetlights, but all she could see was the weight of despair pressing in around her. It was then that she passed Mr. Thompson, a fixture in the park, his frail hands gripping a tattered umbrella. She had seen him many times, always exuding an odd but comforting wisdom. The lines on his face told more stories than her own ever could. "Evening, Sarah," he called, his voice cutting through the downpour. Something about it compelled her to stop, to pause and look him in the eyes. "You look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders." With a sudden swell of embarrassment and exhaustion, Sarah's composure crumbled. The floodgates opened, words poured from her like the rain from the clouds outside. She spoke of her struggles, the scars that marred her heart and the relentless cycle of fear. "And I'm doing this for Lily. But I don't know how to break free." The vulnerability tightened around her throat, choking her with unspoken pain. Mr. Thompson listened intently, his gaze steady, and as she finished, he leaned closer. "You have the strength to change everything," he said, those 7 words echoing in her mind, wrapping around her like a lifeline. Before she could fully grasp their weight, Sarah felt a shiver snaking down her spine. Even with thoughts of hope surging forth, dread surfaced when she heard footsteps approaching. The familiarity spun her mind into chaos. The man from her past stood before her, casting an ominous shadow, the storm echoing his threat. Sarah recoiled, pressing herself against the wall, the weight of his gaze suffocating her courage. "Do you really think you can outrun your demons?" he taunted, a smirk curling on his lips. Her heart raced, panic screeching in her chest, making it impossible to remember the strength she had just begun to discover. The tension crackled in the air. Each word he uttered was laced with venom, pulling her back into the darkness she feared. But she felt Mr. Thompson's voice nudge her inner resolve. What had she learned? The support from the memories she kept clung to, all the strength growing quietly within her. Before the confrontation deepened, she could almost hear the whispers of her neighbors in her mind, murmurs of their struggles weaving into her own. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Her breathing quickened as the threshold loomed, between knowing she had a voice and fearing it would crack under pressure. The storm, both inside and out, became a battleground. Would she summon this new strength? Or would the rain drown out the flickering determination ignited by those 7 simple words? With the presence of her past so close, pressing ever harder against her, Sarah realized this moment would define everything. She stood at a pivotal crossroads. Fear didn't only threaten to bind her, but also unleashed a fierce determination to confront it. The world around Sarah blurred into the background as adrenaline coursed through her veins. She stood frozen, mere inches away from the embodiment of her darkest memories. His face, etched with malice, twisted into a sneer that put into question the very foundations of her newfound resolve. It occurred to her, in that moment of sheer terror, that she was standing at the precipice not just of a confrontation but of her own self-discovery. Outrun my demons? No, I will face them, she said, surprising herself with the strength of her voice. As the words left her lips, she felt a surge of empowerment, a stark contrast to the dread she had lived with for so long. His smirk faltered for just a heartbeat, a crack in his facade that she seized upon. This was about more than just him, it was about breaking free of the chains that had long kept her bound. Each syllable became an anchor, grounding her to the reality that she could redefine her narrative. Look at you. All bravado, he scoffed, stepping closer, invading her personal space as if he could intimidate her back into submission. The scent of rain hung in the air, mingling with the scent of stale fear that had marked her life for years. But now, with Mr. Thompson's words ringing in her mind, the bitter taste of his presence became a catalyst rather than a deterrent. No more running, she murmured, determined in her resolve. I'm not that woman anymore. The rain intensified, but within her, a defiant flame began to flicker, refusing to be extinguished. Memories flooded her mind, times she had made choices, however small, toward a better future. The nights spent studying late into the dark, the moments spent gathering resilience, all leading to an awakening of the spirit within her. Why should I be afraid of you? She challenged, daring to meet his gaze. The urgency within her spiraled upward, this was the moment she needed to seize. Because I know you. I own your fears, he taunted, leaning in further, but his bravado didn't hold the same weight anymore. For so long, Sarah had allowed herself to be defined by this man's actions and her reactions. But now she realized that the power to redefine herself lay solely in her hands. She understood instinctively that facing him would not eradicate her past but would liberate her from its grip. As his words dripped with disdain, a thought sparked within her. What if she vocalized the truth she had buried for too long? The moment felt like an electric pulse in the air, charging her resolve. You think you know me? You only knew a version I allowed you to see. But you don't own me anymore. The atmosphere changed, with each word, the weight of his presence shifted. She began to see through him, the illusion of his control dispersing like mist in the sunlight. The remnants of fear crumbled as confidence rose, intertwined with purpose. He stepped back, startled by the unexpected rejection of his influence. You think talking's enough? You're just as weak as before, he countered, but his voice had lost its venomous edge. With a newfound determination, she yelled, Watch me change. The rain drowned out her voice, but it echoed clearly in her heart. This was more than defiance, it was a declaration. As silence enveloped them for a moment, Sarah felt a rush of vitality swell within her, each heartbeat resonating with a powerful synergy of clarity and strength. But the vulnerability remained. There was still more to confront, not just him, but within herself. As the rain began to subside, she looked into the darkness where shadows existed, yet she stood illuminated by her newfound clarity. Fear no longer had a hold over her, but the real question loomed larger than her confrontation. Would she embrace the journey ahead, the commitment to healing and the struggle to regain the identity stolen from her? The answer awaited her, but first, she needed to walk away from the past, ready to carve a new destiny. Just as she prepared to leave the shadows of her abuser behind, a distant voice cracked through the stillness, a familiar sound that made her freeze. It was Lily calling her name. The simple reminder of her daughter's love pulled at Sarah's heart, stirring the urgency to not only prove her strength to herself but to become the mother Lily believed she could be. Standing there, Sarah inhaled deeply, infused with conviction. The next step was not simply forward, it was toward an empowering future, where vulnerability and strength would coexist. With the echoes of their confrontation still fresh in her mind, she turned to face the path ahead, determined to confront what awaited. But as she stepped away from the precipice of her past, another challenge loomed on the horizon. The question remained, how would she balance her fight for freedom with the fierce love she had for her daughter? The journey had just begun, and uncertainty nestled again in her chest, intertwining hope with fear as she rushed toward the call of her daughter. As Sarah moved through the damp air, the sound of Lily's voice grew louder, wrapping around her like a lifeline. Each step was imbued with dual purpose. She not only sought to reach her daughter but also to continue the reclamation of her identity that had felt so fragile moments before. The unfamiliar but exhilarating strength surged within her, urging her to forge ahead, weighed down only by the remnants of doubt. Her heart raced, carrying an almost palpable weight as she considered the implications of her transformation. The rain had washed away some of the past, but she knew that remnants would linger, shadows that could rear their heads at any moment, reminding her of who she once was. Could she truly balance her personal journey with her responsibilities as a mother? This question loomed, troubling yet pivotal. Upon reaching a muddied path, Sarah hesitated briefly, the nostalgia for earlier versions of herself tasting like iron on her tongue. Yet nothing could deter her now, she had gained clarity amidst the chaos. Just a short distance away, Lily was frantically searching for her, distraught and vulnerable, much like Sarah had been not so long ago. "Lily," she called, her voice filled with determination. A moment later, her daughter came into view, rain-soaked and wide-eyed, looking just as fierce and fragile as Sarah felt. As their eyes locked, something profound passed between them, a shared understanding, an unsaid promise of resilience. "Mama!" Lily screamed, running into Sarah's embrace. The warmth of that connection ignited a fresh fire within her soul, dispelling the last remnants of fear and uncertainty. "I'm here, baby," Sarah whispered, enveloping her daughter in protective arms. "I'm going to be all right, and so will you." But deep down, shadows still whispered their doubts. Could she really keep that promise? Would the strength she felt now sustain her through the inevitable tumultuous waters ahead? As they stood there, holding each other tightly under the drizzling rain, Sarah realized that her journey to self-reclamation wasn't just about her personal healing. It was about equipping Lily with tools to face her own challenges, to demonstrate that vulnerability was not a weakness but a pathway to strength. She wasn't just battling her own demons, she was rewriting the narrative for her daughter. Just as the air became heavier with their shared emotion, a gust of wind cut through, making her instincts flare up. Sarah pulled back slightly, she felt an urgency swell, an inner voice demanding she not dwell too long in affection. There was work yet to do. "Lily, let us get you home," she said, breaking the moment, her voice firm with clarity. The resolve that had stirred in her felt like a shield. She vowed to nurture this newfound energy for the future. As they began to walk, Sarah formulated a plan, though unformed and vague, it sparked something hopeful within her. She thought of creating rituals around their bond, sessions where they could discuss their fears and triumphs, a space where vulnerability could blend with empowerment. She envisioned moments of shared strength that could anchor them amidst adversity. But as clarity turned to resolve, dread, too, slinked back into her mind, lurking. She understood the danger ahead. Gary, her past loomed with every decision she made. Would he retaliate against her newfound strength? Would he come for Lily? The thought cut deep, but Sarah was ready to confront not just the remnants of her past but the possible specters of her uncertainty in the future. Just as they reached the entrance of their apartment building, Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the shifting weight of her dual responsibilities. As she opened the door, a familiar unease settled within her. She was stepping into the unknown, the past might still cast shadows over their lives. What path would unfold before them now? As Sarah stepped inside, a silent question loomed: how would she protect the fragile yet fierce bond with her daughter while combating the very figure that had tried to break them? The answer waited just beyond the threshold, and she braced herself for the challenges ahead. The moment Sarah crossed the threshold, a sudden stillness enveloped her. The familiar clutter of their small apartment, once a battleground against chaos, now symbolized both comfort and impending confrontation. She glanced down as Lily, still clutching her hand, eyed their surroundings with a mix of relief and apprehension. The silence rang loud, amplifying Sarah's pulse. Was it too quiet? "Lily, why don't you grab a towel and change into some dry clothes?" she suggested, her voice steady but laced with anxiety. The act felt symbolic, a first step toward reclaiming normalcy, but even as she attempted to impose routine, the walls of their home closed in around her. "Okay, Mama," Lily nodded, and with that, she hurried off, leaving Sarah alone in the chill of their entrance. Sarah's mind raced. How would she maintain this facade of strength when doubt clenched at her heart? She spilled out onto the couch, her thoughts spiraling towards Gary and the darkness he represented. She had seen the fallout of fear, and it made her resolve to break the cycle all the more urgent. What were her resources? Ignoring the pull of hopelessness, she began to calculate. She would keep the lines of communication open with Lily, create transparency between them. It felt like an embryonic strategy, but Sarah wrote her ideas down anyway. Each written word burned with promise. "Strength is power, vulnerability is strength," she muttered aloud, repeating the mantra that had begun to solidify in her mind. Could she flash it like a shield against future darkness? Moments later, Lily returned, her hair tousled, and she looked different, empowered. The image stirred something deep within Sarah. This was not just about her healing, it was about fostering strength in her daughter. Would that alone be enough against the looming threat? She felt the interplay of fear and wonder, a new role as a mother who taught resilience, but could she embody it? "Can we do that thing you said?" Lily's innocent request broke the tension. Sarah felt warmth seep into her chest. "You mean the ritual?" "Absolutely. Let us sit down and talk." On the coffee table, Sarah placed a cozy blanket and 2 mugs of hot chocolate as if setting a sacred space. Her heartbeat steadied slightly with every sound of Lily's laughter. It was an echo of their intentions not only to share but also to bond and fortify. "Do you remember what we talked about?" Sarah began, keeping her tone light yet serious. "What do you fear most?" Lily's smile faded. I worry about being alone, if you get hurt." Her sincerity caught at Sarah's heart, sending daggers of guilt through her. "I won't let anything happen to us. I promise, we'll face it all together. You won't have to do this alone." The words felt solid as they left her lips, grounding both her and Lily in that shared promise. Yet, still, shadows crept, whispering of the unpredictability of life. The courage in their exchange felt fragile. Was courage enough to shield them from Gary's shadow? Sarah fought the fear that threatened to overshadow her newfound resolve. "Can we promise to always talk about what scares us?" Lily asked, her voice small yet unwavering. A wave of intention washed over Sarah, born from the lessons she had begun to learn just moments ago. "Yes, we promise to be honest and brave." With those words, Sarah committed, deepening her understanding of their bond and marking her territory in the narrative of their lives. The fragility of her resolve slowly transformed into its own strength. They would chart their courses together. Yet, as the warmth of the evening wrapped around them, Sarah couldn't shake the sensation of impending confrontation. Would Gary take notice of her efforts? Would he identify the change, sniffing out the weakness he had exploited, a chink in her armor? She glanced at Lily, who was blissfully unaware of the precarious dance they were performing with danger. But fear could wait, they had a moment to savor within the sanctuary of their home. But just as they settled into the comfort, a violent knock shattered the fragile peace. "Sarah, open up." The voice was unmistakable, filled with command and malice. In that instant, time seemed to freeze, and her heart raced anew, propelled by adrenaline and the weight of destiny. The moment had come. Would she face the chaos head-on or retreat into fear? She inhaled deeply, ready to confront the figure that held the capacity to unravel everything she had sought to rebuild. The decision awaited her, a test of all she had just vowed to protect. The air thickened with tension as the insistent knocking reverberated through the small apartment. Sarah's breath quickened, a cocktail of fear and determination swirling within her. She could feel the heat of Lily's gaze fixed on her, the innocent question of whether they were safe hanging in the atmosphere like a loaded weapon. "Stay back, sweetie," Sarah whispered, her voice low yet assertive, as she pushed off the couch, every bit of her psyche aligning toward the door. It felt surreal, the energy in the room pulsed with the impending confrontation. Was this it? The moment where everything she had worked for could either solidify or shatter. Sarah. Gary's voice rang out again, more forceful this time, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of his boots thudding against the doorframe. You can't hide forever. Open up. Instinctively, Sarah clenched her fists, remembering the strength that had begun to take shape between her and Lily. Was she ready to confront the man who had brought so much fear into her life? With each knock, the resolve crystallized further. This was not just about her anymore, it was about modeling bravery for Lily. Hey, Lily, she called back, managing to keep her tone even. Why don't you go to your room for a moment, okay? No. Lily's response was immediate, and her eyes filled with apprehension. I need you to trust me, Sarah said, sliding her hand over Lily's shoulder, capturing her daughter's attention. You'll be safe in your room for just a minute. Reluctant yet trusting, Lily nodded slowly, her small form retreating down the hall while Sarah's heart thudded in her chest. The time for avoidance was over. She was done running. Facing the door, Sarah took a deep breath, allowing the mantra once more to settle in her bones: strength is power, vulnerability is strength. She needed that duality, each flowed into the other, building the armor she needed for the confrontation ahead. With every step toward the door, Sarah visually catalogued her surroundings: the clutter of toys, the half-read books, the mug that had once belonged to Gary but had been refilled with her own resolve. Each item was a reminder of how far she had come and how she had grown despite him. She reached for the doorknob, the metallic surface cool and grounding against her palm. Choosing to face this is a choice I make for me, she said quietly but firmly, giving herself permission to reclaim her life. With a deep intake of breath, she turned the knob and stepped forward, opening the door just enough to meet Gary's gaze. Sarah, he said, his voice dripping with false charm, this really isn't how you want things to end. Just let me in. We can talk. Sarah's mind raced, capturing memories of the manipulation, the chaos that often followed such discussions. No, she stated decisively, feeling an unexpected surge of authority. We are done talking, Gary. You don't get to dictate how my life goes anymore. A flicker of surprise darted across his face, quickly replaced by anger. You think you're stronger than me? You think you can just actually, yes, she cut him off. There was no room for doubt now. Each word that spilled from her mouth was laced with newfound conviction. I found my strength, my voice. And I'm no longer afraid of you. Gary's expression hardened, his facade slipping as he studied her. The shift in her tone didn't escape him. You think the little girl in there is going to be safe? Think again, Sarah. The threat hovered in the air, heavy like a storm cloud, intensifying the stakes of this showdown. Instinctively, Sarah felt the pull to retreat, yet something deep inside her roared with defiance. You have no idea what I'm capable of protecting, she spat back, every syllable building walls of resolve around her. I'm not just fighting for me anymore, I'm fighting for Lily. The tension was electric. Sarah searched his eyes for the last flicker of humanity that had long since extinguished. In that moment, she recognized that this was about more than survival, it was about drawing a line in the sand, refusing to allow his presence to dictate the narrative of her life any longer. But as she held her ground against his tempestuous storm, another realization settled in the nagging question of what his next move would be. Would he back down, cornered by her newfound resilience, or would he escalate this confrontation to a level she had never imagined? In that charged silence, beneath the chaotic facade of their exchange, Sarah sensed a critical pivot. She was no longer alone in this battle, she was armored with her own power, and the stakes had just risen. Let us see who's really stronger, then, Gary said abruptly, stepping closer, his intent unreadable but threatening. The moment teetered, ready to explode into chaos or change. Sarah stood resolute, prepared to face the truth of their twisted history, knowing the upcoming clash was not just about fear or dominance, it was woven into the fabric of her will to protect Lily at any cost. The question lingered as the confrontation escalated: could the power she had just harnessed withstand the storm that was about to erupt? Without breaking eye contact, Sarah remained still, feeling the pounding of her heart echoing in the tense silence. Every nerve in her body was alive, energy coursing through her as the stakes climbed to unbearable heights. Gary's face twisted into a scornful sneer, the bravado belying an underlying fear. He was not used to being challenged. "Do you really think you're ready?" he taunted, inching closer, eyes narrowing as he gauged her defensiveness. "You only had strength because I let you think you did." His words were hooks attempting to pull her back into the darkness of doubt, but the truth she had unearthed felt invincible. Each breath reinforced her conviction. Gary's attempt to instill fear was a reflection of his own insecurity, a revelation she hadn't fully grasped until this moment. "Your power existed only because I allowed it," she echoed, voice steady. "That's not the truth. You can't strip away what I've built for myself and Lily." She saw the shudder in his stance, doubt was creeping in. A small satisfaction fluttered in her chest, but she pushed it down, channeling the energy into a clearer focus. "Your time to control me is over." Gary scoffed, but Sarah maintained her stance, refusing to let his bravado deter her. "Remember the day you said I'd never be anything without you? Every hollow promise you made, it was your own cage that held you captive, not mine." For the first time, a flicker of worry flashed across his eyes. The power dynamic had shifted, she could sense it. It wasn't just her words, but the weight of realization that struck him with surprising force. She had evolved into a force that threatened his very identity. "Your little mind games don't work anymore," she insisted, each word carving deeper into their history. "What you call strength is just fear disguised as power, and it's pathetic." Seeing the vulnerability in him felt strange. Sarah had grown, while he seemed smaller, trapped in a persona that no longer carried weight. For years, she had lived in his shadow, and now the shadows were lifting, revealing the truth. This was no longer just about confrontation, it was a moment of transformation for both of them. "Can't you see it's not just me against you?" she pressed, energy intensifying in her voice. "You've created your own monster, and now I'm reclaiming what belongs to me." Gary's expression twisted, morphing into frustration and rage. "You think you can win this game?" "I don't think," Sarah replied, a calm clarity bathing her voice. "I know." In her heart, an unexpected flicker of compassion stirred. Could it be that this childish display of aggression stemmed from his own fears of inadequacy? She thought of Lily, the innocent child who deserved a life of freedom, and it steeled her resolve. "Remember this moment, Gary. It's your chance to walk away before the consequences you never imagined come crashing down." The words came out firm, empowered. "You're bluffing," he retorted, a desperate edge creeping into his tone. "I'm not bluffing," she shot back, realizing this was her chance to pivot the narrative. "This is my new reality, and it begins now." She stepped forward slightly, creating a physical and psychological barrier. The space they had shared for years began to redefine itself under the weight of her declaration. The air surrounding them shifted, laden with impending change. "What if I don't back down?" he challenged, desperation ghosting his voice. "Then we'll see exactly what you're made of," she answered confidently, finally comprehending that she held all the cards. She had faced down the tornado and emerged alive, while he was still trapped in the whirlwind of his own making. As the palpable tension filled the air, she could hardly foresee what would happen next. Was this confrontation truly the catalyst for a lasting change, or would it spiral into chaos? Just then, a sudden loud thud echoed from the hallway, breaking the fragile moment. "Lily." Sarah's head snapped toward the sound, fear slicing through the burgeoning confidence within her. "Lily!" she cried, instinctively stepping back toward her daughter, even as Gary's eyes lit up with cunning. Had she underestimated him once again? "Maybe it's time for a new game," Gary said slyly, the challenge now fully ignited. The stakes had risen sharply, uncertainty loomed on the horizon. Would she be able to protect her daughter from the fallout of this confrontation, or were they both about to be swept into the storm again? She took a deep breath, bracing herself for whatever came next. In that moment of mounting tension, Sarah's instinct screamed at her to prioritize Lily's safety above all else. The fear that had briefly flickered in her mind transformed into a sharpened resolve. She couldn't allow Gary to control this situation any longer, not with her daughter at stake. "Stay behind me," Sarah called back, her voice steady despite the storm rumbling within. She could feel the melding of fear and determination in her gut, a potent blend that ignited every fiber of her being. Gary advanced once again, an insidious smile creeping across his lips as he turned his full, predatory attention toward Lily's presence. "What a perfect timing for a family reunion, don't you think?" he taunted, relishing the power he believed he still wielded. She stepped closer to the door, blocking his view, her heart racing as she calculated her next move. Sarah's thoughts were a whirlwind, yet beneath that chaos was a newfound clarity. She had spent too many years playing passive, confined by the labels he had placed on her. This was different. "Don't underestimate me, Gary." The confidence she had fought so hard to reclaim bristled in her words. "I will protect my daughter, even from you." Gary's bravado flickered momentarily, revealing the uncertainty that lurked beneath. Yet he quickly masked it, his anger spilling over as he attempted to re-establish dominance. "You're nothing without me, remember. You'll never be able to keep her safe from what I can unleash." A fire ignited in her chest, and Sarah felt the truth of her journey crash over her like a wave. She had always felt tethered to his perception of her, as if his belief in her inferiority was a binding chain. But the chain had been severed, she had broken through the darkness he sought to impose. "Maybe that's what you still don't see," she replied, her voice steady and unwavering. "I am more than what you say I am." The moment hung suspended, a breath between her ultimatum and his response. It wasn't just a battle for power, this was a declaration of her identity, a reclamation of strength that had once been robbed. For too long, she had been conditioned to think that survival meant adapting to his aggression. Now, she recognized that survival meant taking decisive action and initiation of true self-defense. As the intensity escalated, a strange calm flooded over her. Suddenly, she understood that the stakes were about more than just Gary, they were also about her growth, her right to parent freely, and her journey of self-discovery. Things were finally coming into focus not just for her but for the path ahead for Lily too. "Back off, Gary," Sarah said forcefully, eyes locked onto his. "You have no power here anymore." With each declaration, she could see cracks forming in Gary's facade, control was slipping from his grasp. Sarah could sense her authority growing, the reality that she was prepared to face any chaos that arose. If he dared to challenge her, she wouldn't merely react, she would act. Before she could process further, another noise echoed from the hallway. The sound of scuffling shoes followed, and her heart raced again. Were they safe? She dared a glance back, finding Lily's wide eyes locked onto her own. In them, she saw a mix of fear and a deep trust, a connection that brought her immediate strength. "Mommy, I'm scared," Lily whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. Lily's vulnerability struck a poignant chord deep within Sarah. This was why she had to strengthen her resolve. This moment wasn't merely about her transformation but about protecting the innocent. "Stay close to me," she instructed, bending to Lily's height. Sarah's thoughts solidified, each piece falling into place as she prepared to act decisively not just for herself, but for her daughter. As Sarah straightened, the room shifted again. Gary was no longer merely an adversary, he had become a dangerous obstacle standing between her and a future worth fighting for. Could she muster the courage to dismantle the last vestiges of fear he held over her? "Ready or not, Gary," she said, heart pounding with the thrill of defiance, "the time has come for the truth to catch up with you." The silence hung in the air thick with unspoken threats, and she could feel the inevitability of the confrontation closing in. Would she succeed in dismantling his control for good, or would the power balance shift in an unforeseen direction? As she braced herself for the storm ahead, a chilling sense of foreboding washed over her. The true battle was just beginning, and from the depths of her mind, one thought surfaced: how far would she go to protect what mattered most? As the weight of silence hovered around them, Sarah's breath stabilized. The tension crackled like static in the air, but every ounce of fear that still clung to her began to dissipate. She could not allow it any longer. This was not just about confrontation, it was a transcendence. With each pulse of her heart, she drew strength from Lily's presence, the essence of protection expanding within her, a burning shield that engulfed doubt. Gary was still calculating his next move, and Sarah could see frustration working behind his tightly pressed lips. The moment wasn't merely one of physicality, it demanded more from her. She needed to dive deep into her own mental reserves, to provoke the nuance of insight she had gleaned through years of endurance. The past may have painted her as a victim, but today, she would wield it as a story of resilience. "Are you ready for the truth, Gary?" she challenged, tightening her jaw. The surprise in her own composure amazed her as it brewed confidence. Coiling within, battling against familiar pangs of anxiety, lay a tempered resolve. She stepped toward Gary, defying the instinct to retreat despite the chaos he radiated. This was an 18th round, and she hadn't bowed out yet. "You're bluffing," he snapped, but the quiver in his tone betrayed a chink in his armor. The reign of intimidation was faltering, and he was rediscovering the power dynamics that had once favored him so dominantly. Sarah took another step, appreciating the ground beneath her, rocky and shifting, yet stable enough with her newfound conviction. "I don't bluff, Gary. I stand by my word, and I plan to stand for my daughter," she said with resolve. In the periphery of her mind, she reflected on her journey, the pivotal moments where she had silently wished for courage. Each grievance she had experienced painted a picture of who she had been forced to become, a woman who had learned to navigate fear. Now, that very fear had molded into purpose. Her eyes narrowed as she recognized her own strengths, the resolve of a protective mother, the insight of one who had lived through manipulation, and the fierce will of someone who had finally chosen to reclaim her narrative. The scuffling footsteps she had heard moments earlier grew closer, and Sarah felt an electric jolt shoot through her veins. It wasn't merely fear, it was a powerful fusion of adrenaline and determination. She wouldn't merely wait, she would act actively. That transformation had revealed itself not just as a reaction, but an empowerment that she had been cultivating. And then Lily spoke again, her soft voice cutting through the storm of tension. "Mommy, I'm with you." It was simplicity that carried the weight of truth. Her daughter believed in her, and with that belief, Sarah felt fortified. Empowerment no longer sat in the theoretical, it flourished in the bond between them. As she turned back to Gary, the shift was palpable. He was beginning to realize that she was done fighting with words. She was prepared to fight with fire. "Gary, it's over," Sarah declared firmly, shifting from defense into decisive action. "I won't let you use terror to wield control any longer. The truth is your fuel, but it will illuminate the way to my freedom." The reality hit him, and a flicker of panic crossed his eyes. Could he really keep holding the reins of fear over her? The moment snapped, like the tactile sound of a rubber band breaking. The atmosphere thickened with the promise of inevitable confrontation. Suddenly, from the shadows of the corridor emerged a figure, tall and resolute. Sarah's heart raced with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. Who was this, and would they aid her cause or complicate the turmoil? As the figure stepped into the light, the game was about to change dramatically. Sarah clenched her fists, understanding that the true test of her resolve was upon her once more. Would this ally reveal an unexpected path to freedom, or were they another unwelcome element in a spiraling conflict? With that uncertainty looming once again, Sarah felt a fresh wave of determination surge within her. She was ready to confront all layers of her fight. The battles had only just begun, but the rhythms of fear were shifting. The figure stepped into the stark light, casting a long shadow across the floor that seemed to swallow the tension whole. Sarah's heart raced, pounding a war drum in her chest that echoed her escalating resolve. The newcomer was familiar Jack, a former colleague and someone she hadn't seen in years. His presence was unexpected yet ignited a spark of hope. He had always been the kind of person who radiated strength and resilience, a far cry from the environment she'd been imbued in. "Sarah," he said, eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that stilled the chaotic air around them. "I came to find you." The weight of those words settled her racing mind as she felt a new possibility unfurl within her. This was not a random encounter. Fate had delivered an ally amidst a den of adversaries. "Why?" she managed, surprise threading through her voice. "How did you know I've been watching Gary's movements," Jack interrupted, his voice steady. "It was an instinct, I guess. I refuse to believe he would dare cross lines that put you and Lily in jeopardy." His commitment resonated deeply with Sarah. Thoughts raced through her mind, weaving together a lifeline of plans and scenarios. Beside her, Lily squeezed her hand tightly, as if sensing the change. This wasn't just about confrontation, they could strategize against the threat together. "Sarah, I know you fought hard," he continued, the tenderness in his tone a stark contrast to Gary's growl. "Now it's about using that fight wisely." His eyes darted to Gary, who visibly bristled at the intrusion. A moment's pause hung thick in the air, sending shivers of anticipation through her. Sarah took a breath, unleashing a newfound tenacity that surged like wildfire through her veins. "You're right. I need to think strategically, but we can't let him intimidate us any longer." Jack nodded, adopting a more serious demeanor. "Let us turn the tables. Use the truth against him. He is skilled at controlling the narrative, but every lie eventually crumbles under scrutiny. Have you thought about gathering evidence, building a case?" The gears in her mind shifted, adjusting to a reality fraught with terrifying potential yet brimming with opportunity. This was the strategic planning she needed. She was no longer merely reacting. This was the heart of her professional expertise. From the years spent navigating office politics, it was her turn to wield those skills in a fight for her life. "Every moment has been plagued by his lies," she replied, determination threading through her words. "I can begin scouring for documentation, messages, anything that proves his manipulation." Lily shifted at her side, her innocent presence a grounding force. In this moment, Sarah realized her daughter's faith in her was not merely an anchor, it was an obligation to reshape their shared narrative. Turning back to her daughter, Sarah sat down, meeting Lily's eyes. "This is going to take teamwork. Are you ready to stand with me through this?" "Yes, Mommy," Lily declared, unwavering. With purpose ignited by their bond and fortified by Jack's unexpected alliance, Sarah faced Gary. "You underestimated us, Gary. My past is no longer a weapon against me. It's the fuel that will light the way to my freedom." The color drained from Gary's face, but stubbornness clung to him like a familiar coat. "You think you can play this game? You'll regret it." "No," Sarah shot back, newfound ferocity lining her voice. "It's you who will regret ever thinking you could control me or my daughter again. I have everything I need to dismantle your narrative, a collective truth, and we are just starting." In that charged exchange, the air shimmered with the imminent flood of battle, the tide turning against Gary's once overwhelming presence. They stood on the precipice of a long-awaited fight where fear would give way to empowerment. As Jack moved to back her up, Sarah felt like a phoenix rising from her ashes, fully grasping the challenge ahead. But lingering questions gnawed at her. Would the truth indeed possess enough potency to dismantle Gary's intricate web of manipulation, or would it unleash an unforeseen storm? What fate lay ahead? Faced with her adversaries drawing closer, Sarah steeled herself for what would come next. The game had irrevocably changed, and she was ready to confront the demons that lurked in shadows once more. The tension in the room reached an unbearable height, charged with anticipation. Sarah stood at the forefront, the embodiment of resilience against the oppressive weight of fear that Gary had long wielded. With Jack's unwavering presence grounding her, she felt the surge of empowerment that had been simmering just beneath the surface. No longer was she merely surviving, she was ready to reclaim her narrative and rewrite her future. "Your threats no longer hold power over me," she asserted, fully embodying the strength she had fought to cultivate. We are no longer your puppets, and it's time for the truth to come to light. Lily, watching her mother with wide, admiring eyes, seemed to radiate the same tenacity that infused Sarah's spirit. Each step they had taken together, every difficult conversation and every embrace of uncertainty mattered as they faced this pivotal moment. Do you really think exposing me will work in your favor? You'll face consequences, Gary jeered, anger lacing his tone like venom. But Sarah sensed beneath it a tremor of uncertainty, the cracks in his carefully crafted persona beginning to show. With Jack's help, truth is no longer just a concept, it's a weapon, Sarah declared firmly, refusing to waver. We're taking back our power, and that starts now. Jack nodded, stepping forward. We'll gather everything. Emails, texts, any evidence of manipulation or control. It's time he faced the consequences of his actions. Gathering the remnants of her composure like a protective armor, Sarah felt something shifting within her, the collective strength of her experience, Jack's support, and Lily's unwavering love. It was time to convert that energy into action. Let us go, Gary. This isn't just about me. It's about Lily. It's about showing her there is strength in honesty and that we can't stay within the shadows he created for us, she said, her voice steady. For the first time since his entrance, a flicker of realization crossed Gary's face. He had underestimated her resolve, coupled with the realization that Sarah had been preparing to dismantle the very foundation he relied upon. But he wasn't ready to concede. I'll make sure you regret this, he spat, but there was a tremor in his bravado. No, Gary, it's you who should be afraid, Sarah replied, each word resonating with promises of change. The game is reversing. No more lies, no more manipulation. You may have controlled my past, but those days are over. With each statement, Sarah felt a suffocating fog lifting, the fog of helplessness and fear. She was no longer bound by chains of doubt. This was a firm assertion of her position, and she reveled in the liberation that came from reclaiming her voice. Mommy, I believe in you. Lily called from beside Sarah, the innocence of her declaration solidifying their bond in the face of adversity. Sarah turned to her daughter, meeting her gaze filled with unwavering faith. It pulsed in the air around them, weaving together the threads of hope, strength, and willingness to confront what was coming next. A single tear of pride spilled down Sarah's cheek as the enormity of her transformation coursed through her. This is our moment, Lily, Sarah whispered, kneeling down to embrace her. We will face this together. I promise you, we will find the light in the darkest moments. She stood back up, determination ablaze within her. This was not just about personal freedom, it was also about creating a safe environment for her daughter, teaching her resilience born from vulnerability. With every intention set, Sarah maintained her eyes on Gary. We are ready to fight, and with the truth on our side, we will prevail. The air between them crackled, charged with an intensity she had never felt before. A cycle of copious emotions converged within her heart, fear mingled with hope, vulnerability intertwined with strength. Good luck, Sarah, Gary sneered, attempting to regain his footing, but the balance had irreversibly shifted. The moment was no longer centered around manipulation, it was a declaration of independence. As Jack moved to her side, emboldened by their collective strength, Sarah felt its warmth setting her soul ablaze. She understood fully now that her past, marked by suffering, was the birthplace of her present courage. Let us get to work, she proclaimed, her voice resonating with the clarity of purpose. Together, they gathered evidence from Sarah's past, meticulously crafting their defense against a tumultuous storm. In the days that followed, Sarah forged ahead with renewed vigor, layering on protections for both herself and Lily. Each document unearthed, every memory recounted, became an affirmation of her journey. The fight that lay ahead was daunting, but it no longer paralyzed her. With validation and recognition growing, she found her place among those who valued truth, and as she stood up against Gary's pursuits, recognition poured in from friends, neighbors, and those who had once regarded her with judgment. She had indeed transformed from a victim into a beacon of hope and resilience. Months later, after overcoming countless hurdles, Sarah stood before a gathering of empowered women, sharing her journey of transformation and courage. Gazing into familiar faces lighting up in understanding, her heart swelled with pride. "This is your power," Sarah concluded, her voice strong and unwavering. "We may all bear scars, but through vulnerability, we can cultivate undeniable strength." The applause that erupted settled in her heart as she felt Lily's warm hand grip hers. They were not merely a mother and daughter, they were allies, warriors, champions of their own stories. With an overwhelming sense of achievement coursing through her, Sarah felt deeply content. She had confronted her demons, transcended her past, and emerged victorious not only for herself but for the future she was building for Lily. Standing united with her daughter, Sarah embraced the weight of their shared experiences, affirming that they would face every storm ahead together, head held high and hearts resilient. In that moment, Sarah knew she had achieved what she had set out to do: redefine her narrative, cultivate a legacy of empowerment, and illuminate a path for others to follow. The shadows of the past had been vanquished, replaced by the shining beacon of hope forging onward. You need to subscribe now to our channel to continue following exclusive emotional stories of triumph. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm for stories that matter. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey and this powerful resolution. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this crucial conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Your support is vital to us all.